Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? This is Priest Jacobs with another episode of the Worthy Cause podcast on the Arena Network. Go to the arenasc.com. Check out all the wonderful people talking about all these wonderful things about South Carolina stuff, whether it's politics, art, commerce, blah, 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 blah. As you can see, my setup is slightly different because we decided to do something a little bit differently today. We weren't going to do this last week. Good thing we didn't do it last week because a lot has been going on. This is my first return guest. I'm
your first return guest?
My first return guest, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. We only done 10 episodes, I guess. But but yeah, so if you guys are fans about the All About Nothing podcast, 2023 Best of Columbia podcast, we have Barrett Gruber here once again. What's going on?
Things are well. I guess just to give you a brief rundown of what we've had going on.
Yeah.
Of course, Best of Columbia. I don't know when this is going to air, but Best of Columbia wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an idea yet of how that turned out, but I'm assuming the best podcast won. I don't know.
Oh yeah, that's because that's usually how.
And this is going to be dated too, guaranteed. That's when you go back and you're like, oh, I need to delete that tweet.
And keep it.
But
yeah.
We've got the Soda City Comic Con coming up in at the end of towards the end of August, 24th and 25th at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center. And what's really cool is partnering with them. We've actually done we've done one live broadcast in front of a crowd at Hendrix. We're going to do a second one. We haven't picked a location yet, but we have a couple that we're working on.
How did that go? How did Hendrix go?
It was really fun. We had a decent sized crowd showed up. We had a good amount of participation from the crowd that was there. We gave away some T-shirts. We gave away some tickets to Comic-Con. We gave away some posters and things like that. It was a really fun event.
So when you do stuff like that, is it you guys have like topics already ready to go? Do you have the audience come in? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So I'm kind of a nerd, so I write down pretty extensive notes. I did a fair amount of research for trivia questions and things like that. X-Men 97. The next one we do is going to be more pop culture rather than focusing specifically on the X-Men thing, because the reason I did mostly X-Men was my excitement over the fact that a number of the guests that they have, the celebrities that are going to be doing panels and signing autographs and whatnot, are all voice actors from the X-Men 97 series.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's so primarily that was my focus. But the next one, the next event is going to be August 21st. And once we find a location, we'll start publishing where that's going to be. And it'll be mostly pop culture, but we're hoping for even bigger crowd. So
okay,
and it's something we want to do. We want to do more live podcast recordings in front of people, just for the thrill, I guess, of trying to host an event at the same time, keep things on topic while being distracted by people from the bar.
So you're talking about like bigger size? How many people are you thinking? Anywhere
between 60 and 100. Not huge, but enough that the bar can go, well, this was worth it.
All right. Yeah. I'll think of some ideas and see what we can do with that.
Cool.
All right. Well, good that there's some pleasant news going on in your life right now.
Yeah. Everything else gives me, fever blisters and or stress inducing headaches and things like that.
I have bubble guts constantly.
It's a changing world.
So when we talked about catching up on Friday, we were going to just talk about, let's talk about Biden and how he handled the debate. And, George Clooney wrote a fucking op-ed to New York Times saying he should drop out. And everyone else is telling Biden to step down. And I'm like, okay, this would be worth having a podcast to have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Then Saturday, I'm gonna tell you what my Saturday was all about. I'm DJing a 30-year high school reunion for Dreer.
Okay.
I'm playing all music from that era, all music either from that year or before.
Class of 94, shout out.
Yeah, there you go.
That's not my class. Mine's 97.
Oh, really? Okay.
I didn't go to Dreer either, so.
Well, shout y'all out anyway. Y'all pay me. So imagine this. In the middle of me playing, we were doing like a a bingo game too, where I have people walking up to me with bingo cards because it has artists from the '90s, and if you get it, you put your little stamp on it, whatever, and then and if you win, you get a prize. So imagine I'm playing Ice Ice Baby, and my phone explodes. Right? You know, we have the arena group text is usually lit on a regular basis, but I get a text message and it's just like, "Yo, Trump got shot." Doom 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 doom. Right? I'm like, you. This sounds like a really really crappy TV script.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what's going on? There's no TVs that have anything on right now.
Right.
Because it's all reunion stuff. So all the TVs, it's like, here's pictures of us in the 90s.
Can someone Chromecast CNN up there, please?
No one knows what the fuck is going on.
That's insane.
Right? So I walk outside, I look at my phone, I see it in and out, and I'm like, holy shit, what's going on? And then I met with this concern where I'm like, do I grab the microphone and say something about this? Or do I just let it go? And you know what I did? Doom, 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 right? And I'm like, I'm not going to be the first person to say anything about this because I don't know these people in this crowd.
That's from an entertainer's perspective, that's one of those things I think that's the most difficult. So, I was in radio when Princess Diana was shot and died. Or I'm sorry, when she was in the car accident. She was in the car accident. Yeah, that was in 97. That was in August of 97. And I was not working at the radio station that night. I was actually managing a pizza place. And when the news broke of what happened, we had a really small analog little television, black and white. We put it on WXIA, which was the Atlanta NBC affiliate. And we're literally cleaning pans and preparing dough for the next day while we're watching this. But I messaged the overnight guy at one of the radio stations that I worked at, and I said, "Hey, have you seen this yet?" And he goes, "I did." And we made the decision that we were not going to run with it. We were not going to say anything because it was a local alternative rock station, and they said we just it doesn't it's not appropriate for us to be the ones that to say it. And I thought that was probably the mistake. I thought, it's not that they're trying to take advantage or be first to announce or whatever. The NBC, the TV stations were already covering it, but like there are people that only listen to like 99X in Atlanta or Y106 or any of the radio stations that I participated in. And but like I just felt like that was from the perspective of wanting to always be the entertainer, but always wanting to be informative with facts and things like that. I thought this is what I do. This is journalism. This is media. This is the appropriate thing. Had we been hosting a live broadcast of a podcast when that happened, absolutely. But that's a different scene. What you were doing.
I was also gonna say, it's like I also didn't know all the details. Like everything was really
scheduled. Yeah. There was nothing that was static.
And the nicest way I can say this is maybe there were probably could have been some MAGA percentage. Like if I did a split percentage, if you would have told me that it was 70-30 for MAGA, I wouldn't have been surprised. And being in a situation like this, where like I also had another incident like this, and this is kind of like a sidebar, but you'll get what I'm saying. So I'm DJing something else on Friday, and I'm DJing this event in Lexington, and it was like a 50th anniversary party for this couple, and the kids put it all together and all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so the daughter is like, "Hey, my parents want to have their first dance song. It was this Neil Young song, blah blah blah, and it's fantastic, great." Then they turn around and the daughter said, "When they're done with that, I want you to play They'll Let You Boogie, the original Boogie Woogie Woogie, not the Cupid Shuffle, whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. And I play it, and it's absolute chaos on the dance floor, right? No one knows how to fucking dance, right?
You did
Right.
say you were in Lexington.
Yes.
That
But I laugh because I laugh because I was just like, this is what happens when the only black guy at the party is the DJ, right? So what I did after that, I played the Cupid Shuffle and I grabbed the microphone and I said, this one gives instructions, right? Because so it's like to the left, like, oh, okay, we can figure it out. Yeah. So I said that to say, in a similar form, the only black guy was the DJ, right? So I don't know how that news is going to land.
Yeah.
I don't know if the news is going to land a certain way where people are going to get angry, are going to get frustrated. I don't know if my safety is going to be questioned. And again, the message that I got was he got shot. Right.
Right.
Like,
correct.
And I'm trying to find information. And so at that point, I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. But I'm also like, I'm telling you the other weird thing. The party went on for a couple more hours. I was at some point, as much as we should be attached to our phones, I was assuming that somebody would just hear about it.
Yeah.
Right. And then I could do the like, oh, word. Right. I could pull one of those.
Yeah. They come up and they go, can you play Too Legit to Quit? Also, the president's
right. You know what I'm saying? Right. So another big thing to me that has been so surreal about this situation is that it's felt like this news has been very nonchalant.
Yeah. So I have friends in both regions of the political spectrum where, I don't generally give into conspiracy theories because I'm of the belief that if that extraordinary claim, Carl Sagan said it. I think it was Carl Sagan. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But I was dumbfounded by the 50 or 60 text messages I got from different people, all asking the same question. Mm-hmm. Does this seem staged? Both sides.
Yeah.
Because no one in my hemisphere of acquaintances to friends and things like that has ever proclaimed that they are ultra MAGA through and through. They question Donald Trump's intelligence and decisions and the things he says and whatnot, but their loyalty to the Republican Party still drives them to support him in the form of the vote because they just do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so because of that, I guess they felt like it was okay to at least question because Donald Trump is nothing if not, a performer.
Yeah.
And so, the way the whole thing played out, and then as we've learned over the past couple of days, with the Secret Service saying that that they would have had somebody on that roof, but it falls outside of their purview. And that
which means they should have had local law enforcement.
So local law enforcement ultimately should have been who was on that roof, or at least had direct line sight to that skyline to see, but the circumstances of the whole thing just played out so perfectly in favor of the shooter. I mean, despite the fact that they killed him and now we'll never know what his intentions were or whatever. But everything played out exactly as it had to in order for this to give Donald Trump a hero moment.
I mean, look, man, as soon as I saw the picture with his fist up, I went to that group chat and I was just like, it's going to be a landslide. Like, I feel like do you remember when George W. was running for his second term? And this is after 9/11. And they had the RNC convention with the RNC. Do you remember what they had as their backdrop the whole time?
Was it the mission accomplished?
No.
Was it him at Ground Zero?
Well, close. So at the RNC, when he was trying to get the second, get his second term, all it said was September 11, 2001. It was a black screen, and it just had that date, right? And that's all it had back there, right? I think the RNC is tonight.
It is. It starts in about an hour from now.
If Trump walks on stage and the backdrop is just that picture the entire night, I would not be surprised.
That would not surprise me.
I take you a step further. I bet you a slice of pizza. How much you bet they're gonna have fucking t-shirts?
Oh,
of that
100%.
of that.
I've actually, so we can't bet on that. I've seen them already.
Oh well, no. All right, I've seen the
You
shirt.
mean selling it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Never discount the Republicans' ability to capitalize on merchandising. That is something I think the Democrats have failed at miserably.
That's the one. Okay, side note. That was the one thing that drove me crazy about Trump's defiance during the pandemic, because he was always like going against, wearing masks and going against like, the real threat of COVID. And I'm like, dog, all you needed to do was just wear a mask or just sell masks.
Yeah.
That just says MAGA or Fauci made me do it, or just be snarky about it. And it was just like for somebody that's such the fact he's selling a fucking Bible right now.
Yeah.
You're telling me you couldn't sell a mask. Like it was such an opportunity for him to do the right thing, but act as if he's doing it to piss off liberals. Like, okay, if they're gonna make you wear a mask, make sure you give them a little message, and that'd be. It was such an opportunity for him to like make so much more money. Anyways,
they want you to wear the M95 masks. I want you to wear the M98 masks, the M45s.
Like it was that was just like a layup, and I'm just like, dog, like, even if you don't want to tell the public that you're really fucking terrified because you caught COVID before we knew what the fuck it was,
right?
Just act like you're doing it in defiance, and it would have been fine. But I do think it's one of those things where if you're talking about two different teams, right? You hear people talk about teams when they're like, oh, this football team has an identity. This football team is hard-nosed defense, or this team, they have great, quarterback play, blah, 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 blah. Even if a team is not great, I would take a team that has an identity. I would think a team that has an identity would be more successful than a team that doesn't have an identity. And I think that the Republican Party is a team that has an identity. The identity is,
absolutely.
Look, we're going to be shameless with a lot of shit. We're going to get behind our candidate, which I also think was kind of part of the conversation about the Biden thing, where it's just like, do you think Republicans wanted to back Trump in 2016? No. But as soon as he got that nomination, they were just like, he's a candidate. He's our guy, even though we knew they were lying through their teeth when they were acting as if they were gung-ho for him, right? And so that was a part of the discussion that, kind of doubling back what we want to talk about earlier, the Biden stuff. The missing part of the Biden conversation is that, all right, George Clooney, Biden should step out. All right, now what? Is Danny Ocean coming in?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like
that guy's a thief. He's done time.
It's like well, so that part of the conversation really frustrated me, because it was so many people that were saying Biden should step down without any type of clear cut layout or plan. And I think the other thing that it proved was that really, I think is proof for both sides of the aisle, is that this country, as far as the political sphere is concerned, don't know how to develop young talent to go into, So funny enough, I was interviewed last week by a political radio show that's based out of California. My homie of mine, Davey D, who's a hip hop historian that also dabbles in politics, and he wanted to talk to me because he's like, oh, you're the South Carolina person I know, so let's just talk this South Carolina stuff. And he was talking to me about, like, a lot of South Carolina politicians, Democrats, telling Biden to step down, and he brought up Clyburn, and I was just like, Clyburn is older than Trump, and he's older than Biden, right? So Clyburn is 83 years old.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And so there's conversations where, when you're looking at a lot of these older people that are in these really, really high political positions, I'm like, what's the succession plan? Gee, that's a part of the conversation too, right? Like, and Obama tried his best to get her to step down. We're gonna give you a lifetime achievement award. Here's a necklace. You know what I mean? Like, and she's like, okay, thanks. I'm sticking around.
Look,
right?
Here's your gold watch.
Yeah.
Just I don't know if we can make this any more clear. But I'm thinking maybe if balloons, cake, anybody, we're gonna
and and it was something where he was really nice about it, but like, you know, it had real life consequences at the end, right?
Yeah.
And so I just don't know. Like I heard I saw Bakari and Jon Stewart on a podcast going back and forth, and Bakari went to, you know, Bakari Sellers is like, he's doing what the Republicans are doing. Like, look, this is our candidate, and it's foolish to pull out when it's like a couple of months, you know, 3 or 4 months before it is a fucking election. We got to stick behind our candidate. And Jon Stewart said something that's really interesting. He said if you were trying to get a job and the performance that Biden had for that debate, you wouldn't get the job. He said, I'm not talking about for president. I'm talking about if you were trying to get a job to work at fucking Home Depot. If you were buffering the way that Biden was buffering, you know, during a job interview, he's like, you wouldn't get that. So again, it falls under, it's easy to say, step out, get the fuck out of the way. So my question would be, if they called you because they love All About Nothing podcast and they love your perspective, if the head honchos of the Democratic Party was just like, all right, if Biden sticks around and runs this out, what do you suggest? And then if they say, if Biden steps down, what do you suggest? Do you have an answer for both of those?
So Biden sticking in and having to, because campaigning is not the job. Campaigning is an attempt to get the job.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, and something I've texted to Emily on who's got one of the other podcasts with your group, Emily Mayer.
Yeah.
One of the things I texted her was, I don't know who it is that is part of Biden's campaign that is actually trying to present most or make him presentable, make him the candidate that people need to see, and how they're instructing him on his performance, because it's hard to control what a candidate says. Obviously, look at Trump.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, the first thing that I would try to knock down would be the anecdotes, the stories that Biden tells. I think ultimately, I don't mind the anecdotes. I don't mind the stories. I think that they have value, but I think that there's something that he needs to practice. If it's going to be part of his campaigning, then they need to be shorter. I think that limiting potential crowd feedback during his speeches would also benefit him. One of the things he does ad lib fairly well. I think that he's quick-witted, you know, but that quick wit sometimes gets lost in the buffering.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be that more, if he's going to do stuff out, it doesn't need to be just off the cuff. It needs to be teleprompters. And it's a thing. He's just got to stay on point. And also I would change the message, not necessarily of the things he's accomplished, because on the Democratic side and the Republican side, both sides, they don't see his accomplishments as being as important as they are. I mean, we had an infrastructure plan and that bill that is benefiting the entire country. It includes high-speed internet across the country, things like this. It has increased the number of jobs for, you know, civil engineering jobs and things like that. It's benefited the country, and I think that it's one of the biggest boosts to the economy. Diabetes, insulin medication under $35 for Medicare patients, to solidify. I know Donald Trump will say that was his thing, and I won't take that away. But there's a caveat to it. But Biden's administration, working with the Democrats and some of the Republicans in Congress, are what actually got that taken care of. We've got student debt loan now for some 5 million students across the country. Billions of dollars have been erased, and some have been, billions of dollars have been reduced from student loan debt, that ultimately public universities like University of South Carolina and these I think to go one step further would be to actually put a cap on what tuition costs for these universities if they're receiving public funds. because I don't attend the University of South Carolina, and frankly, I know this is unpopular in Columbia, but I could give a shit about the Gamecocks. It's not. It
He
just.
didn't mean it.
It doesn't. It just. Look, Georgia Tech fan through and through.
Okay.
Whose tuition is also outrageous. But I just, I think that there are ways that I think that this Biden's campaign going out and pushing the things that he's done, and not leaning more heavily on what he plans to do for the next 4 years. I know that they've talked about it, but it feels like they're trying to go back to the greatest hits all the time. And a majority of the population of the United States, the voters, the actual voters that are going to turn out and vote are not hearing that message. And I don't know that you can express it in a way that will actually come across enough for people to get excited about another term. I would also, and he's doing it some, but I don't think that he's doing enough, and I don't know that he can. So a spokesman for the campaign, or send out all of your spokespeople for the campaign. But I think what they also need to do is they need to lean heavier on the message that Donald Trump is a 34-time convicted felon.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump has, there are allegations that Donald Trump has done things with or been involved in situations, according to the Epstein files, whether they're true or false. There are at least the allegations that there have been crimes committed against minors. There are the criminal prosecution that he's already gone through, not criminal, civil prosecutions that he's already gone through, involving the E. Jean Carroll and the defamation, his businesses, the fact that he can't conduct business in the state of New York anymore because of the crimes that they've been found guilty.
I'll be honest with you, man. I think that part of it, I think, is what has happened with Democrats when we look at, if you go back to Hillary, and I think that Hillary's main thing that she was doing, which it would have made sense in any other election cycle, but she was like, look, he's a fucking criminal. He's an idiot. Listen to what he's saying, whatever, right? Somehow, some way, it's not like the public doesn't know that he's a criminal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Somehow, some way, it just doesn't deter them from voting for him. Like I think some of this shit is basically like, oh, y'all trying to, y'all trying to get him in trouble for fucking a porn star. I would fuck a porn star if I had $100,000. Wow, people think like that, and I think that there's a part of that where, if we're talking about an election, who are we talking about as far as pushing it over? Because Trump is going to already have his supporters, and then Biden already has his supporters. And then what you're seeing now, and this is why people are scrambling, is that now the supporters that Biden would have, you have major donors that are saying we're not going to give Biden money anymore, right?
Right.
And so it's like, all right, well, where are we going? And Bakari said something I thought was really interesting. He said, we always talk about America being a two-party country. He said, we're not. He said the parties we have is, Republicans, Democrats, and the couch. He's like, what I mean? Like, the couch doesn't even have to campaign. Yeah. And right. So what end up happening,
we choose the couch every night.
Right, yeah. Right. You know what I mean? And so what I really want to know is, if telling the public, because I see it on Twitter all the time, I see it on Instagram all the time, even this assassination attempt, from what I read, one person was killed.
Yes.
And somebody's in a hospital now.
Yes.
And Trump has not gone to speak to those families. He hasn't visited them. These are people that were at his rally.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, his statement, the statement that he came out with was, I shouldn't even be here right now. Like, the narcissism, and I get it. You have to be a narcissist to run for president, at least a little. You have to have some sort of an ego. But the fact that Donald Trump is so comfortable, I mean, he was at a speech just a week ago or 2 weeks ago where he told the attendees of this rally, he said, I don't even care about you. I'm paraphrasing, but essentially it was, I don't even care about you. I just need your vote. And that isn't a slip up. That is him. That is him being the most honest, which is, he's acknowledging the fact that it isn't the job of the presidency that he wants. It's the power of the presidency he wants, and he'll take it however he can, and he doesn't care whether his, what happened this past Saturday could have been much, much worse. I feel for the people that attended that rally, because it was a situation where if this had been somebody who had been heavily armored or wasn't necessarily there to try and shoot at Donald Trump, if he was there to commit mass murder on the people that were there,
oh boy,
it would have been much more devastating. And that's not to say that it wasn't already, but there was the possibility that somebody like this 20-year-old registered Republican who had voted actively in the 2022 general election, had voted in primary, there was the possibility that this individual could have turned that gun on the crowd and hit far more people and killed many, many more people than he did. So it's by the grace of whoever that you profess your faith to, that this individual wasn't there to commit mass murder. He was there just to, and the fact that there was collateral damage, and Donald Trump doesn't even acknowledge that someone else lost their life. Someone else may still lose their life. But the crowd, that crowd was trapped.
Yeah.
The people that were on the bleachers were trapped. It could have been so much worse. And Donald Trump has not, as far as 3:30 on the Monday following the event, Donald Trump has not acknowledged that
at all.
And he's not. If he does, it's only because someone forced him to in a speech, and we'll get to see him glitch on stage at the RNC.
I mean, look, even his wife had somebody write a damn message for her. Like, so like, all right,
her being here on a genius scholarship really irks me. How low does your IQ have to be in order to get a genius entry into the United States? Sorry, that's low. But so was her IQ probably.
I was about to say, like, I know a part of her, she's just like, I just don't want anybody to bring my name up ever again. I just want to be in the news.
Oh yeah.
So I think she was annoyed, like, oh shit, somebody tried to shoot her. I guess you got to put my name out there again. Like for all of the power that Trump wants, she wants none of it. Like she probably wants the whatever, like being married to I don't even know if she wanted him to be president. I think they were going to divorce. They were going to divorce before that, right? Like, yeah.
So do you want? I don't want to sideline you, but do you want some breaking news?
Give it to me.
Donald Trump has chosen Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his vice president.
I was thinking it was going to be tonight. And I was going to make a joke about this. I was going to say this: if this assassination attempt proves one thing, is that Tim Scott is not getting the nomination, right? Like that's the first thing. That's the first thing that ran through my mind. I was just like, "Oh, Tim Scott is definitely not getting it," because it is as much as people might be like, "Oh, Tim Scott, Republicans love him. He's a black Republican." They don't want him to be that close to being
president.
No.
It's the same as if Trump,
Rubio,
right? See, that's the thing is that underneath it all, regardless of how much people want to deny it, Donald Trump is always going to be racially engaged. From his perspective, he recognizes people not by their value, but by the color of their skin or the religion that they profess their faith to.
Yeah.
And so J.D. Vance fills all of the holes. And ultimately, all of the holes being, one, he's white. Two, he's from a state that he needs. And he was probably already going to get it anyway. But had he taken Florida would have been guaranteed. Florida's almost semi-guaranteed anyway. But J.D. Vance being white, lower middle-aged, and that he is in Ohio, I think those were the three things that Donald Trump needed to fill, because it wasn't going to be a woman. Yeah. As much as they wanted to say that Nikki Haley was in there, or Kristi Noem, or that psychopath down in Arizona, whatever her name is, Carrie Lake, it was never going to be any of these three women, because there's no way that Donald Trump could ever show any respect to any of these women. He would not, it wouldn't have, they would have been sidelined completely, and just to acknowledge, there are people in the press and things like that talk about the work that Kamala Harris has done as vice president, just completely degrading what that job is. And that job is primarily, yes, to be there in case the president has to be, either replaced or temporarily or permanently. But Biden has entrusted her in things like the gun violence and the border crisis. And those are two things I think that fall well within her realm because of her experience as a district attorney in California.
California of all places, yeah.
And I don't think enough credit is given to Kamala Harris from the perspective of this is a woman who has clawed her way in a profession that not only is held mostly by men but mostly by white women. So to be black and to be Asian and a woman, and to be the second most powerful person, I mean, outside of somebody in the Pentagon, the second most powerful person in the executive branch of the United States government. If Biden were to hold a press conference or at the DNC convention were to come out and say, I've made a decision, it's not in the best interest of the country or the party for me to continue to run, I'm going to step down and I'm endorsing completely Kamala Harris for president of the United States. I would support that. From the perspective of, if he endorsed a bag of shit against Donald Trump, I would vote for the bag of shit, because the likelihood is that bag of shit isn't going to come and have federal agents raid my home to take out the guy that's been talking crap about him for the last 7 years on a podcast. But there are 50 or so Democrats that are behind Biden that ultimately I think they're young enough. I think that they've had enough experience that they could fill the role as president, and I think they do well. And now I guess we sidelined ourselves with the JD Vance thing. Congratulations, JD Vance, on being one of the most disgusting. That was what I was going to say. Was the other gap that JD Vance fills is JD Vance was an individual who, prior to being elected to office, was a never Trumper. This was a guy who said during his campaigning, he said terrible things about what Donald Trump represents and how he doesn't represent the Republican Party. He said that Donald Trump was somebody that he could never back, and how quickly he turned once he won that election, which I didn't think he was going to win. But he very quickly turned around to saying, Donald Trump's my guy. I was, never had to come out and say I was wrong, but just acknowledging that he is so fully in support of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's memory must be like that of a styrofoam peanut that goes into a box that carries, your candy to your house or something. JD Vance pulled like one of the greatest 180s that I've ever seen in my life.
Well, I think also, Lindsey Graham, you can say the same thing. Like let's say all the Tim Scott, you can say the same thing. Well, I was going to say, at least Tim can cancel that fucking wedding now. You know what I mean? Like,
he's not going to get dragged to the. He's not going to get dragged on stage to.
I think what you're saying, the Kamala conversation. This is why I think the Democrats annoy me with this. And back to the idea of, I think the party did a bad job of trying to, have a succession plan, because when Biden won the first time, he, from all the stuff that I read, he was planning to be a one-term president.
Yeah. I think the idea was that he was, and he's acknowledged it. The idea is that he was basically going to prime the next person in line. He would defeat Donald Trump. He would accomplish whatever goals it is that he had planned, and then he would move on. He would set things up for the next person.
And so my thing is, if if Kamala is going to be your VP, then she needs to be somebody that the party takes seriously of grooming for that. That means that you need to put her in a position, whether it's being more visible, whether it's being, I don't know. And if she wasn't that person, there needed to be a way of figuring out who it needed to be. So I think it looks bad that if the Dems are like, we need to have Biden step down, and you have any other name other than Kamala, because that means that you had no intention of her being ready for the job in the first place.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I think that's the undertone that bothers me the most about this, right? Where any other situation, I mean, think about it. Like, Reagan's VP became president,
Yeah.
Obama's VP became president, right? Like it's supposed to be, in a way, hell, George W's VP was the real president. And so maybe it was a situation, maybe that Kamala thought that we would both be one-term people. I don't know. But I don't think for the party not to be prepared and act as if, oh shit, there's another election, what do we do now? Like, that part of it really, really drives me crazy, because I feel like for us to be in July talking about step down for November,
Yeah,
I think that just makes no sense.
I'm glad that it's happened in June and July, because I think that there's still time for the campaign or the Democratic Party to come up with a solution to this. And I'll just say, ultimately, I think because of the time that Biden has put into this, that Biden has been president, that Biden did lead us out of COVID, that Biden did accomplish more than I thought that he would accomplish. Because for me, Joe Biden was a corporatist Democrat. I think that I still look back on what happened during the Clarence Thomas hearings, and how Biden controlled the narrative on Anita Hill, in a way that really degraded her on a national spotlight. And whether he's apologized for that or made some sort of penance for it, to me, it was still, there wasn't, I think that Joe Biden would have been better in that time period if he hadn't been so gung-ho about supporting Clarence Thomas, who had so many skeletons in the closet. That now coming to light, we see a Supreme Court justice that takes money for his decisions, that he keeps company with individuals that are incredibly covert about their own companies, and how they're lining his pockets. And from my perspective, our Supreme Court has gone so rogue, and I fear some of the decisions that will potentially come out of in relation to Donald Trump's hearings and court cases and things like that, that I think right now, that the Biden campaign should focus on going ahead and just putting in 4 Supreme Court nominations. Go ahead and pack the court, so that at least we have, a 7-6 7-6 leaning liberal, but they won't just put in like extreme liberal judges. I trust that Biden's camp would use that opportunity to at least level the court.
I think Democrats are too busy fighting themselves to even agree on anything. And I also because Clarence Thomas, was that a HW or is that a Reagan appointee?
That was an HW.
Okay, because that was after Thurgood died.
Correct.
Died.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And gosh, that whole thing is just a mess, man. Like, the fact that Trump, as much as we can't stand this dude, the fact that he put 3 Supreme Court justices in there is fucking insane to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then even that, there's this Obama was literally his constitutional rights to nominate a Supreme Court justice to replace who was it? I can't even remember who it was that. RBG, right?
Yeah.
That he didn't his constitutional right as president, he didn't get to use it
because Mitch McConnell
right.
Yeah. Which, by the way, Mitch McConnell literally stopped talking during press conferences.
Yeah.
And to the Republicans' credit, what Republican came out and said Mitch McConnell need to sit his ass down?
Not one.
Not one.
Not one. And that's why I think that's ultimately why he's not going to rerun. He's not going to run for reelection.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he recognizes, or someone has at least said, we're going to spill your closet if you don't go ahead and bow out. But yeah, Mitch McConnell's control over the Senate I have no respect for what he did, because I don't think any president should be denied the constitutional rights that they are afforded when elected.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what a volcano evil lair,
Mm-hmm.
James Bond bad guy was Mitch McConnell in that situation.
Yeah.
Just unfounded.
And I think Democrats are easily bullied, because I think here's what I think is the issue between Republicans and Democrats. I think Democrats get bullied because they're worried about being perceived as doing the right thing, or being perceived as being like they want to be liked, right?
The Merrick Garland confidence.
Yeah.
Or it was the Merrick Garland. We had another word for it, but it was basically this idea. It's kind of like the situation that has occurred today with Eileen Cannon, the federal judge that has now thrown out.
Well, we didn't even get to that yet. Yeah.
But essentially, here's the issue. When the Department of Justice went to begin their investigations, Merrick Garland did this thing where he said, I don't want to appear partisan in any way. I want to remove all the politics for it. So I'm going to appoint this special counsel. And this special counsel, Jack Smith, is now going to run these investigations. The terms at which Eileen Cannon was able to throw out Donald Trump's case, which it's a temporary throw out. It's going to be appealed. Yeah. But it was based on the fact that the appointment of a special counsel isn't legal in the case of Donald Trump, because it wasn't confirmed by the Senate, which, going back 50 years, every special counsel that's been appointed, whether it was Nixon all the way up through Clinton, Ken Starr, that these were never so if they were never confirmed by the Senate, special counsels. So does that mean that Hunter Biden's now off the hook because a special counsel investigated Hunter Biden?
Yeah.
Special counsel investigated both Pence and Biden about the documents that they had in their homes, and ultimately dismissed it. So are these things that now have to get thrown out? But in Eileen Cannon's toss, she basically said that this only pertains to Donald Trump. And it's like, it's every decision she makes, it's almost like, could you potentially be any more obvious about what it is you're doing?
Listen, and with the momentum of that being announced the first day of the convention, right after that picture comes out, I mean the thing about Republicans that they have on their side is that they know they're already disliked. They know that they're already perceived as corny. They know that they're already perceived as being assholes. So them as a gang, they roll harder for their gang, harder than anybody else. So that's why, so I want Democrats to be bullies a little bit more, as opposed to, I remember, gosh, what was that guy's name? Like I remember the Democrats got Al Franken the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Like, got him the fuck out of there.
And I won't say that what Al Franken was accused of doing, and then a photograph. Was it like one or two photographs?
Yeah.
I don't know how many scenarios there were that Al Franken was potentially involved in that really led. But you had cinema out there like just bashing him, saying this guy needs out. But when it came to Donald Trump and the things that he did while he was in office, or the phone call and things like that, I didn't see that level of anger against Donald Trump from these moderates that attack somebody else for a similar action.
Well, I guess because I don't want to be on here too long. Are we been about an hour a little bit? Okay. But what do you think is going to happen?
You mean as far as the election goes?
I guess, yeah. What do you think?
So that's a tough question. I had before everything happened this weekend.
All right, does Biden, if you were a betting guy, does Biden stick around once he stepped down?
So I'll say I think Biden's going to stick it out.
Okay.
I think Biden's going to stick it out, and ultimately I think the message from the campaign has to be less about it's not a diversion. It's not trying to deflect away from his performance in the debate or his glitching on stage in front of rallies, things like that. His press conference he did from the Oval Office last night. I think that again, the job of the president isn't to run for president. The job of the president is to be the CEO of the executive branch of the federal government. And can Biden do that job? Yes. Can Biden last another 4 years? I don't see anything that indicates that he's going to pass out and die. He's healthier than almost any president that we've had, not necessarily in office, but at least at the age.
Got you.
George H.W. Bush was almost confined to a wheelchair in his later years, and he lived a long time. I don't remember what the relative. I don't know how old Biden was compared to George H.W. Bush. I think one of the things that, in respect to Biden's abilities right now at the age of 81, is look back at Ronald Reagan running for office for his second term. This was an individual who and the Republican Party did a fantastic job of hiding it, which the Democrats in the White House are now being accused of. Why did you hide Biden's age from us for the last 2 years? But Ronald Reagan couldn't tell the difference between his wife and a lamp.
Wow.
I mean, there were points where he was so dementiated that this was an individual that the only thing you could really do, the only thing they did was get him to the point where he could read off a teleprompter. And I know that 87, when he went to Berlin and he did his tear down this wall, you have good days and bad days. And basically the whole country, I mean, Reagan won in a landslide his second term. I mean, like one of the largest landslides that we've ever seen. And there were reports and acknowledgments then that Reagan was not healthy. And Biden now is not what Reagan was then. Biden is not I don't think Biden is dementiated. When I see him speak, I see an old man, but I don't see someone that's incapable of doing the job. And I'm not just saying that because I support Biden or back Biden. There's plenty of things he's done in his past that I'm not a fan of. There are the way that he's approached the pushing marijuana towards legalization. I'm not a fan of how that's been handled because it's moving too slowly. And I think that if they were to kick that into gear so that it's in place before the election, I know it's pandering, but you would get the Hispanic vote better, and you'd probably get the black vote better, and you would probably get the collar popping white guy vote better too.
Yeah, I think a little pandering can help to if it's going to get some policies done.
Trump literally stands up there and panders all the time.
I mean, listen, you got this far. Being a politician, don't need to stop it now.
The Republicans have created a playbook,
for
all parties, as far as I'm concerned. And but your question, so in relation to the election, Donald Trump, as indicated by a single 20-year-old shooter who is a registered Republican in the state of Pennsylvania, who actively voted in the 2022 general election, I think that is an indication of the lack of actual support that Donald Trump has. The MAGA wing of the Republican Party makes up 20% of the 100% of the Republican Party. I think there are more individuals out there, regardless of him almost being shot or injured in a shooting. I think that the likelihood is that there are more individuals that had to hold their nose when they voted for him in 2020. And those individuals that held their nose in 2020 don't see a difference between 2020 Trump and 2024 Trump,
Yeah.
that they're just not going to turn out.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of a campaign manager for Matt Villardo, Matt V4SC.com, that from that perspective, I think that that is a good indication for Democrats in locations across the country that lower turnout for Republicans is good. But now with the whole Biden thing, there's a potential we're going to see lower turnout from the Democrats. This could be one of the lowest turnout elections in history.
And we back, bitch, like magic. So I think the last thing we should say as we leave, I think one of the things that you were talking about that I thought was really interesting is that you were saying that the Biden campaign or the Biden team, they're always talking about, what they've done in the past, right? Like, this is what we've done for 3.5 years. If there's one thing that the Republicans are doing effectively now, is that they're laying out, hey, this is what a future will look like if we get Trump back in office. So stuff like Project 25, which I don't know everything about. I know the Arena has some articles on it, and I've looked at some stuff. I know everything that I see about it has been very, very doom and gloom. Do you have a grasp on any of that stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Project 2025 is a point by point breakdown of the type of federal government that the Heritage Foundation wants to put in place, using Trump as their tool to basically, the idea is to secure power for the next 50 years and beyond. So doing things like the president, expanding the power of the presidency through executive orders, using a inline Supreme Court to strengthen the power of the presidency to things like that control anything from declaring war, being able to fire tenured federal employees in replacement of a oath to the president rather than an oath to the Constitution. A lot of it is basically this idea. Yeah, it's this idea of taking the presidency and as much as Republicans don't want to hear it, but turning the Democratic presidency into a fascist state, an authoritarian sort of state, sort of similar to China or Russia. Right now, the president is limited to only being able to be elected to 2 terms. The Project 2025 lays out the groundwork for how to approach a potential 3rd term of Donald Trump's presidency.
Well, that's one thing that I always believe, is that if Trump got in there for a 2nd term, that motherfucker ain't leaving. He gonna figure out some way to try to stick around as much. Look, the people want me. I'm gonna stay as long as they want.
Yeah.
And so for the history buffs, how did FDR get 12 years?
We didn't have a constitutional amendment that required the presidency to be limited to 2 elected terms.
So there was just a gentleman's agreement after George Washington. He was like, you know what?
Well, Washington laid the groundwork in an attempt to limit the length and the limit the power.
We didn't fight these motherfuckers to have another monarchy, pretty much, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which that's why I give Washington credit, because this dude, if he wanted to stay in there for life, who the fuck was telling George Washington to step down? So he chose to do that, with all that in mind.
I saw Hamilton. Hamilton tried to talk him into staying. And kudos to Lin-Manuel. That Hamilton is one of my favorite go-tos in the car.
Yeah.
Like, I will bust out some
it's so
Aaron Burr, and
Don't you remember during the Obama administration we had shit like Hamilton? Like, that was so fun
in the White House. But yeah, so the idea behind Trump being able to, inside of the restraints of the Constitution, that an extremely right wing leaning Supreme Court could assist Donald Trump in the ability to nullify the constitutional constraints of a third election to the presidency by basically saying that he was cheated out of his opportunity in the 2020 election. And it's and at its most shallow level, the claim is absurd.
Yeah.
He lost the election.
Yeah.
There was no evidence to support that there was any fraud involved in the election, and yet this is something that the Heritage Foundation has authored into their Project 2025 documentation to indicate that we have a plan in place to use this right-wing leaning Supreme Court. And I mean, and I'm dumbfounded by the fact that the Heritage Foundation has basically allowed for all of us to be able to look at it and find issues with what we read. And if you ask some extremely strongly Donald Trump supporters, you say, have you read the Project 2025? And they go, no. I said, are you concerned at all about the fact that it basically makes Donald Trump president for the rest of his life if it works, if he's elected? And they're like, I'd be okay with that. And it's like, how? You give all impressions that you are in favor, or you are emboldened to believe that the Constitution is what makes the United States. But when it comes down to adhering or following the amendments, the Bill of Rights and the amendments to the whole thing, that you give this impression that you're okay with it not sticking to the Constitution as long as it's Donald Trump as president.
I'm going to end this on something that's going to be just as terrifying, but it'll make you, I think it'll scratch your interest. Do you know who Amy Jacobson is?
I've heard the name.
She's one of my favorite authors, and a lot of stuff that she writes about is like military related stuff. So she wrote Operation Paperclip, that was about how we got all these ex-Nazis to help us with the space race.
Right.
She wrote Surprise Kill Vanish, which was like the history of paramilitary operations when we would go and just assassinate people.
Yeah.
And she has a new book that is about nuclear war and talking about how close we are to it, how plausible this is. And she said, what is the quote that she said? She said something to the extent of, I can't remember this quote, but she did say this Einstein quote when he said, he made a comment about World War III. And it was just like, how do you think weapons would be used in World War III? And Einstein was like, I don't know how weapons would be used in World War III, but I know that any wars after that will be using sticks and stones. So basically, the amount of power that the president has with what happens with the nuclear responsibilities and how many nuclear weapons that we have, to have a person like that in control over this, I think that scares me more than anything else. And having this back and forth with these different countries. I mean, listen, even when Trump was beefing with North Korea and he was like, I'm a tail rocket man, he was going to, I'm like, to have that type of rhetoric when everybody got these nuclear weapons. And it's like one of those things where as soon as you press the button, you can't stop it. You can't redirect
right.
it. So that book is very interesting. I would, if you get a chance, I would check out either that book or some of the interviews of her talking about it, because, with this new election coming in, a lot of this rhetoric going on, like, I'm really fucking terrified.
Read 1983 too. I mean,
84.
Yeah, 1984. I mean, there are so many things that just seem to, they aren't exact, but they are, they just feel similar. I think it was Bakari Seller, when it was Bakari that said, that it may not have been him, but somebody said that I heard over the weekend is that it's not exactly the same as what went on here, what went on there, but they rhyme.
Mm.
And the fact that they are similar enough they're similar enough to recognize the similarities is the disturbing part. And I would just ultimately I would really suggest that if somebody's on the fence, that they take into consideration how it is that they would perform the job of presidency. Would they go against the Constitution? Would they potentially consider assassination of their political rivals, or policing their political rivals to the point where they're being arrested and imprisoned? These are, if you can somehow find the perspective of saying, if I voted for Donald Trump and then I later regretted it, or would I regret a situation where Donald Trump is now in control of every election from this point on until the day he dies?
Yeah.
What if he appoints his son Donald Trump Jr.? No, he wouldn't appoint him.
He doesn't like that one.
What if he appointed Barron to be president of the United States after Donald Trump? Like, what if he left that in his will? Like, there are so many things that could potentially be turned into executive orders, and I say that knowing that it sounds absurd and it's not something that we should have to worry about, but I do. These are ultimately the things that make me go, when is it time to check out?
You know what? I know that there's like some people out there that like are like, they always have to be in a relationship. It's like they break up with somebody and then they immediately have to get a boyfriend and a girlfriend or something like that, or whatever. And sometimes you just want to be like, hey man, you're going through these little bad relationships. Why don't you take some time for yourself? You don't need to be in a relationship. America, we've been going through some bad relationships lately. Do we need to be in a relationship right now? Can we just be presidentless? Just for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, just be presidentless just for a little bit. It's like we can find ourselves, you know what I mean?
Well, or maybe not presidentless, but at least partyless.
Now that would be nice. And I do think if this Project 2025 stuff pops up and all this type of stuff, I think you're gonna really see elections from now on really have a viable third candidate pop up and not just be somebody to steal votes from somebody else.
Yeah.
I think that has to be the future of American politics.
Yeah.
Is that there has to be another option. So, which people are talking about, oh, what about Bernie Sanders? Bernie is now older than Biden now.
Yeah.
So,
it's not like nobody was paying attention to Bernie and he all of a sudden just aged. No, he's always been older than Biden. Yeah. But at least in 2020, Bernie was running through airports. I'm not saying Bernie. I'd like for Bernie's ideology, not necessarily Bernie. So
here's my question, and I was having a conversation with somebody the other day about this. I was saying about how if when we're talking about splitting the party up, and I hate to keep going back to 2016, but like, I remembered at the DNC when Bernie was giving a speech, and it sounded like he begrudgingly was like endorsed Hillary. I don't know. He was one of those. It wasn't like an endorsement of Hillary. It was one of those, well, if I didn't support you, why would I be here? Like, you ever have like a woman arguing with you, but like, are you mad at me? If I was mad, I'd tell you I'm mad. Like, no, you wouldn't, right?
There were things about his endorsement of Hillary at the DNC convention in 2016 that still sort of, they didn't feel right. And one of those being the camera going to Bernie before he took stage, when he was still he was in one of the box seats, and he visibly had bruises on his face. And I questioned whether or not someone didn't strongman him into going ahead and doing the endorsement.
You know what? All right, now me bringing this up, this makes a little more sense, because my vision of all that was them putting the camera on the crowd and you had tons of people with their Bernie signs.
Yeah.
I bring this up to ask this one simple question. If Hillary and Bernie sorted it out, do you think a Hillary Bernie ticket would have won in 2016?
With everything else playing out, with the FBI, Comey, like reopening the investigation and everything, no.
Okay.
I think Comey's attempt to seem fair and balanced, despite the fact that he had been a lifelong Republican, and ultimately, while he didn't claim an affiliation to Trump, and Trump fired him later, I think that probably devastated. I don't think it would have worked out, because people didn't like Hillary.
Uh-huh.
There were a lot of people that were voting for Hillary purely based on the fact that she was the nominee, and it's almost like some of the Republicans now
Yeah.
that are like, well, Donald Trump's the nominee, so this is what I got to do.
Yeah.
And there were Democrats that voted for Donald Trump because they were so adamantly against Hillary, despite the fact that they were for Bernie. And I know because my father was one of them. He voted for Trump in 2016 because the Democratic Party, was so adamant that they didn't want an independent representing them in the White House.
Wow.
So I'd like to think that Bernie could have been the vice president to a Hillary Clinton, but I think that, and it's such a, I don't think Hillary would have given Bernie Sanders the space to grow in that office either. I think she would have confined him exactly the way that Mike Pence was confined.
Yeah. Speaking of which, where the fuck is Mike Pence?
I did see he made a statement about praying for Donald Trump and his family after the shooting or the.
See, if I was Pence, I'd be like, hey, dog, you remember when no motherfuckers tried to kill me?
Right.
Remember they tried to kill me? Did you have my back? Did you say you were sorry? Let me stop. But yo, all right. Well, that's enough feeling terrible for today. Tell people
Look,
about.
Let me just say this. Okay. This experience that we go through now, and I don't want to sound like a guru or something else, but this experience we go through now, whether it's good or bad, is entertainment. It's good entertainment. It's bad entertainment. It's Seinfeld versus Seinfeld season finale. And ultimately, I think taking all of it too seriously sometimes takes away from how best to handle the situation. So like as frustrated as I am with the Supreme Court, as frustrated as I am with how CNN ran a debate where they knew that Donald Trump was not going to stay on point. He wasn't going to answer their questions. He was going to deflect. He literally shit his pants while he was on stage. The sound of him talking and then gurgling was, if you go back and you watch it and you listen to it, you hear it very clearly on CNN's own broadcast.
Wait a minute, what?
I'll give you the clip.
Oh my god!
I'll give you the clip. But Donald, I opened an episode of What the Pod that dropped July 15th, literally with the sounder, and these are things that at its core are entertaining. I want them to turn out with the best possible, and I have to have faith that we as citizens of the United States will do the right thing. But if we don't, have an exit strategy.
Listen, I feel like I have this theory about Jon Stewart. I think Jon Stewart, when he left in 2015, he thought Hillary was going to get it.
I did too.
And he thought that, hey, this is going to be boring as shit. Let me step out now. There's no way Jon Stewart would have retired if he knew Donald Trump was going to win. Like there's no fucking way, because as a comedian, Trump being president is material gold. Right. And and maybe when the world is burning around you, you got some really quick, some great jokes for it. But the perspective, and I wrote about this, the perspective that I feel like I should adopt, that it drives me crazy sometimes, but it's like George Carlin, where he was basically like, I have no hope for either party. I don't have any expectations. He's just like, I'm here for the jokes now. I'm here to see it fall apart. And it's like a social experiment for him now, right? So, I like to be more hopeful than that, but Lord, shit's making it kind of hard.
I'll just say, on Saturday, July the 13th, that the world changed, and not for the better. And I get everyone will go back to, this was the day that someone took a pop shot at Donald Trump, or three. But we lost one of, and it gets me a little emotional, but we lost one of the most unique individuals with the biggest hearts when we lost Richard Simmons.
Yo.
And I know we haven't seen him in years.
The fact we lost Richard Simmons, and that was just like a blurb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Shannon Doherty.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care that much about. I'm not going to say I don't care about Shannon Doherty, but I never idolized her. But Richard Simmons was one of those people that you knew genuinely cared about every single person he came in contact with.
If that is not like like a real visible, like, you know, whatever quirks Rich Simmons had, you knew that he was just genuine as fuck, cared about people, was very positive. I don't think anybody ever said anything bad about this man ever.
But even if they did, I mean, you know, people would say things about his sexuality or that, you know, whatever. But as much as that potentially hurt him, because I think he knew that he genuinely cared about every person that he came in contact with, as much as those allegations from his past would have potentially hurt him, it was basically just something that he just wiped off. He said, you know what? It doesn't matter what somebody thinks about me. I'm going to be me.
You know who's trying to play him in a biopic, and he didn't give his blessings to this person.
If you say Pauly Shore,
yeah, it's Pauly Shore. Yeah, Pauly Shore wants to do it, and Richard Simmons didn't want him to play him.
Pauly Shore, I've seen Pauly Shore on stage here in Columbia years and years ago. I was so excited to see Pauly Shore, and all it was, he was on stage for about 45 minutes, and he gave us about a half hour of his movie Pauly Shore's Dead, and then talked about the movie. And it was like, I came here to see the Weasel, and I didn't get my Weasel. So
that's such a, oh my gosh, that's such a 90s thing that I totally forgot about. Like fucking Encino Man. Yo, my guy from Encino Man won a fucking Oscar now, right? Isn't that the craziest shit, right? But anyways, boy, we're old. This is Preach Jacobs of the Worthy Cause podcast. I guess that's all I got to say. Check out the All About Nothing podcast, and we've talked long enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, we'll catch you guys soon, and I hope the video looks good and all that good stuff. Till next time.
Y'all keep listening and watching him.
Keep listening and watching him too.